Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have Katie Martin. Very easy name to pronounce. Usually I let the guests go because I don't want to mispronounce her name, but you got an easy name to
I know. I have a boring name, but thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And just so people can sort of get a feel for what you do and things like that, you're an artist, but can you sort of explain the sort of pieces that you do so people have a better idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of title myself a wildlife and landscape acrylic painter. I'm a studio artist, meaning I literally work here in my studio from home every day, especially now due to quarantine. Life hasn't changed, but so much for me. But I use acrylics and I do kind of a graphic, bold, bright style.
Yeah. And so you're in Portland now, right? Or in the Portland area?
Yep, Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, and then you're from the East Coast, right? Or in North Carolina?
Yeah, I've lived in a lot of different places. I was born in New Jersey. I would say I grew up in Maryland.
Okay.
But I have lived in Virginia and then spent a bulk of my time, most of high school, college in North Carolina. And then since college, I've kind of moved all over. I've done the Rockies, I've done New England, and now out here in the Pacific Northwest.
So what kept you moving around? That's a lot of states to cover.
I know. A lot of people was like, was your dad in the military? And I'm like, no, he was an insurance salesman. We just kind of moved around a lot. When I was little, it was just kind of moving for my dad's job. But my parents split up when I was like a teenager, and I went to live with my mom in North Carolina when I was about 15. And but that was a blessing in disguise. That's kind of like where I don't know, really, I discovered surfing and really kind of came into a good friend group and just kind of, I don't know. It was nice to live at the beach. I was loving life, so it wasn't necessarily a bad transition there.
Is there a big surfing community in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think so. As far as the East Coast goes, North Carolina, Florida, New York, New Jersey are some of the better places for waves. Obviously hurricane season is where we really get the show, but summer's pretty flat and boring. But North Carolina, particularly where I went to school, Wilmington, North Carolina, is by Wrightsville Beach. And that's a pretty popular surf destination for people in that area, I would think. Yeah,
because I'm from Milwaukee, and there's actually a big surfing community in Milwaukee.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that surf the Great Lakes. I actually had someone on the podcast who does. There's a whole community of Great Lake surfers.
That's funny. I'd seen it on a surf video before, and I was like, wow, I wonder how often they actually get waves. And I think I grossly underestimate how big the Great Lakes actually are. And they do get some waves from the wind and in the storms.
So I guess the outdoors and sort of surfing and things like that really informed your art creation as well. So can you explain a little bit how that inspired you? Were you always interested in the arts and painting, or was that something later on in life you started?
I've always just kind of been drawn to it since I was a kid. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was an artist, but he was kind of more in the marketing scene. He was my uncle kind of described him as Don Draper from Mad Men. Okay. He worked at an ad agency in New York City back in the day, and when everything was by hand before the graphics came into it. So I think always having my mom's influence and his influence a little bit. He died before I was born, but there was some arts in the family for sure, and I was either, drawing or playing outside as a kid. So I think naturally those things just kind of came together and served as the foundation for a career in the arts.
Yeah. Cause were you drawing a similar, now you sort of, you go more towards wildlife and animals and things like that. Were you doing that as a kid too, or did it change for you?
I don't know. I think it's always kind of been nature driven, honestly. Yeah. That's just always where my passions have lied. And that's been my main source of inspiration. I couldn't have, pointed out as a kid then that's where I would be. There's a lot of other outdoorsy things going on. I was really into soccer and, but it wasn't until later in life that I guess college, when I started reconsidering my major and what I was going to do and what that would look like, that I kind of thought about art more seriously.
Yeah. Could you talk about that a little bit? What made you, there's so many different career paths anybody can really get into, why art specifically?
And art's probably not the one you choose for any sort of lucrative, I'm remembering my dad being like, oh, an art degree, huh? All right. You can have health insurance. What's the plan? My mom was stoked about it. I originally went to UNCW one, so I could continue surfing regularly because it's about 5 minutes from the beach. So that was the selfish reason. But then they have a really prestigious marine biology program there. And I was interested in that. And I found out very quickly that math was not my strong suit, which I already knew, but it was really kind of hit some roadblocks there. And I also thought, like, came to the realization not many people get to swim with dolphins. They're more like studying petri dishes in a lab. And I was like, I don't know if that's me. And simultaneously, my art professors were kind of encouraging me, one particularly, to consider a degree in studio art. And I was like, okay. Because I was really enjoying my art elective classes and I was really kind of like hitting my stride there. And I hadn't really considered it yet seriously until some conversations with them. And then my mom was all for it because obviously her dad was an artist. So yeah, that's when I started thinking like, okay, I might go the art route, you know?
Yeah. Because I had a very similar thing where I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And then because I was like, oh, yeah, you know, you go to like all these sites and I like really liked history and like learning about like ancient civilizations and all that stuff. Yeah. But then you realize that like it's just you're in a lab. Like that's basically
it's
standing
like,
around.
Yeah. The romantic idea of it is like, I don't know if that matches up with reality. It's funny. I actually went to an archaeology camp as a kid. I went to like a lot of weird nature camps. And so this is like just total outdoor geek. But that's funny.
The dreams of like what you wish the job was, and then the reality really hits you hard.
Totally. I think I've been through a lot of like really short-term career changes. Like I've literally done everything from like work at a park to a tattoo artist to a substitute teacher to a surf instructor to a snowboard instructor to just trying to keep like the idea of like a 9 to 5 in an office just made me like sweat and anxious and just like couldn't do it, you know?
Yeah, just trying to maneuver around that 9 to 5 with different careers.
Got to pivot and figure out like where you can make money and what, You
know, I talked about this sort of with like living places, and I'm sure you sort of feel the same way about moving around. It's like and it's the same with careers. It's like you don't know what you don't like until you do it, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the idea that people should just go and like experience one career and only do that is like, it's problematic because you don't really know until you're in there and then you're like, oh man, I don't like it. And now this is the only thing I've ever done. So what do I do?
Totally. I think it's crazy. Like, you know, if you're going to college or university and you get asked so many times as a freshman, you're, you know, like, what, 18? I don't even, how old are you when you go to college? You're 18.
18, yeah.
And people are like, okay, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And you're like, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I don't even know where my first class is here. Like, you don't, I mean, I guess there's some people who are like, oh, I know I want to be a doctor and that's my thing. And like, they know, but I think a lot of artists probably feel similar in that, like, they have this genuine desire to create and have a creative lifestyle, but they don't really know what that looks like. And it can look like so many different things and you can't really pinpoint it at the time. You know, I didn't even know what a studio art degree really entailed when I got one.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like when you're 18, it's like they're asking you what you want to do for the rest of your life. And you're like, I barely live my life. I don't know.
You're like, I don't know what I want for breakfast tomorrow. I can't,
Yeah, I'm a teenager. Like I'm going through this weird transition anyways. And now I'm supposed to decide. No, it is true though in the arts specifically. And I've realized this too, is that, talking to more and more people, it's like there's so many avenues in the arts for like, not only creating, but actually making an income and like living a life, and I think when you grow up, you don't get exposed to any of that because I even like doing this podcast and like talking to different artists and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. Like, because no one told me, so it becomes hard, especially in the arts, I feel like, because you're exposed to such a narrow pathway of like, this is what art is when you're growing up, like you're drawing, you're painting, that's art, and everything else you don't know.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah. I think my friends are like, so you just like Bob Ross in it over there? Like, what do you do day to day? Like, they don't really know what I do. And I'm like, it's like a lot of different legs of a table that come together to like make it a functioning, at least for me, like career. There's different elements to it, but.
For those people out there that are interested in a career in arts, like what are those different aspects of like what your day-to-day is and like what you're doing?
For me, I'm a morning person. I think my actual studio time, which entails like me actually painting and doing that is kind of the morning hours. I like to kind of get up and get the good light and utilize like when I'm awake and feeling like really productive and good. So I'll do like a chunk of painting in the morning and then, midday kind of the more not so fun stuff, checking emails, filling orders, doing stuff like that. It's a bunch of different things. Like you're planning for shows and festivals are like one avenue of income. You're talking to gallery owners and figuring out if gallery representation is something you want to do. If you're answering questions about commissions, people like, I want my pet painted or I want this stuff, and like, so it's kind of, I found, at least for what keeps my business going, is being open to different opportunities that you didn't even know existed. Like it's really cool when people reach out to me and find one. I'm like, I'm not great with technology. I'm like, how'd you even find me? Like, I always like to know, like, where'd you hear about me? Like, how'd you? Yeah. And they'll reach out and be like, I want you to do a podcast, or what do you think about this surf related art show? That's also a fundraiser that I did recently for like Surfrider. It's like all these cool connections that you can make, and being open to those opportunities is what it really kind of fills the plate.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, and I work in video. I'm a video producer, so I have a similar thing where you have this like basically one end product that people see, and they're like, "Yeah, what's the job?" Totally. I'm only seeing this end product. So is that all you do? Is this one thing? But
exactly. And like, especially now, it's like such a content driven time, particularly now, because you're required to be on Instagram all the time. And I'm like, I hate technology. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. I think I should have been born in a different time. And I just have an aversion to it. I'm not great at it, but you have to, if you're not putting out like every second content, people are like, well, what do you do? Where's your new work? What's the, and it's like, are you
done painting? Like what's the deal?
Exactly.
It's like, I've been gone for 2 days. Yeah. I have a problem with that too. I have a very similar mindset to you, where I feel like if I wasn't in like the video field and stuff like that, I probably wouldn't have any social media, and I would just be fine with that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm with you.
I really want to go back sometimes to having a flip phone, because I don't like the idea that people could contact me all the time either. So,
and they expect you to respond right away. And I'm like, sometimes I'll just like leave it at home for like hours on end or day. Like if I go camping or whatever, I'm just like, not here. I'm not.
With that, in your style, I mean, people can look it up too, is like super unique. I've never seen anything like it. And that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast and talk to you, because I think it's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
Where does that come from? Because I really haven't seen that before. Like, where does that style come from specifically? And it's very like texture based, but with colors and like segmented. It's really cool. So where does that come from?
Thanks. I don't know, my weird brain, I guess. People ask this, and I sometimes struggle with how to describe my style until you see it, and also like where it comes from. Mm-hmm. The best way I can explain it is just like the layering approach, I think, is what kind of builds that like texture that you see. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I like chunking together like blocky colors and like making up whatever subject I'm painting with these kind of geometric shapes and stuff that I keep going until I see what I want represented.
Yeah. Is it something that you plan though for example, if you're painting like a falcon or something, like when you initially are like, I'm going to paint a falcon, do you draw it out, or is it just like literally layering chunks of paint over and over and then figuring it out as you go?
It's a little bit of both. Like if it's an animal that I don't know intimately well, like maybe like the face of a falcon, for instance, that's not something I see like every day, face to face. I'll use a couple reference photos for sure, just to get proportions right and like the features. But as far as like the actual idea and the composition and the colors, that's kind of something I see beforehand. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to like have it angled this way, and I want to use these complementary colors or whatever it is. And then as I start, layering and the colors come together, that's where it gets a little bit more free and creative, and kind of can see which direction it's going to take from there.
Yeah, and that's almost like insanely more impressive to me, because I feel like it's already hard to like draw animals and things like that. At least for me personally, I feel like it is. But to sort of just be going and just like sort of create it as it goes, it has to be a lot tougher, I feel like.
Yeah, yes and no. I think that's kind of the fun part. The part I don't like is like the last 10% where I'm like, you're done, like put it down, just like shut it down, because like as like a perfectionist, you tend to like overwork stuff sometimes. Right. So I'm always envious of the artists that have almost more of an abstract kind of like, it looks like more of a laid back kind of approach, where they're just like, I'm like, oh, that's a cool effect. Yeah. And I can tell what it is, but they look a little bit more like carefree about it. See, I struggle with that. My partner brought this up. She's like, it's funny because you are such a laid back person, yet your art kind of reflects this like thought out, like pieced together thing. And I'm like, I never thought of it that way.
So when do you know when something is done for you? Like being that type of person that it's hard to put something down. When can you be like, I'm finished. This has to be done.
Usually I know. I mean, for the most part, I know. And I'm like, okay, like I can stand back and look at this and it's like, makes me feel good. This is what I saw in my head. Like, yes, I know. And then other times I just like tend to overwork it a little bit. So I'm working on like cutting back like just a little bit sooner. And then like I'm usually really happy with the result.
Yeah. Do you have to like go away a couple of days and like come back and look at it and be like, okay.
Sometimes, yeah. Like if I'm not getting it, if I'm just like can't seem like I get it 80% there and I'm like, I don't know, like I'm not feeling it. I'll like put it down for a couple of days, come back and then have like a refreshed kind of set of eyes on it. And that usually helps.
When you were going back to when you were in college, like what made you pivot and go to studio art specifically? Like you said you were like taking classes in art and sort of enjoyed it more, but did you have like a moment of like, okay, well, I actually can do this as a career or something like that in college? Yeah,
it was actually a while after college. I kind of felt like a little bit of a imposter syndrome right after school because I wasn't utilizing my degree at all. I was totally in like the outdoor recreation field. I did seasonal work for about 5 to 6 years between a surf instructor in North Carolina and a snowboard instructor out in Vail, Colorado.
Okay.
Or Beaver Creek, Colorado specifically. And I loved that, but it was just traveling every 6 months, like back and forth seasonally. And while the inspiration was like awesome, I mean, I had tons of like fun adventures and reference photos and like it definitely built the foundation for inspiration to go off of with an art career later. But it wasn't until I was living out in Colorado that on my off days from teaching on the hill, I would kind of like go around all the high end galleries out there and I'd be like, man, I'm so inspired by all this like Western art and all the wildlife paintings. And like, they were like, thousands of dollars. And they were bright and like colorful. And I was like, this is like hitting a nerve. And it kind of like reignited the art flame for me. I was like, well, what about long-term? Cause I was still very like day to day, like kind of adrenaline and just like wanted to be outside. And that was like where I was finding joy and what I was able to create job wise. But it wasn't until I was working, I think like in an off season, I was like working as a like a furniture restoration place. They'd like refurbish like cool pieces of furniture and resell them. And I was selling paintings on the side at a restaurant in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I was selling out of them before I could paint more. And I like started thinking like, okay, like maybe I haven't given this enough credit. Like maybe I can make a career out of art and maybe I should prioritize that. So that's kind of when I started shifting focus to like, all right, I love these outdoor jobs I've had, but what are you going to do long term? And, how can you be creative and how can you incorporate art, which is ultimately another love of mine. So that's when that kind of took over. And I started really focusing on like, I want to paint and sell my paintings.
Yeah. Cause was there also like some exhaustion as well? Cause I've also moved around quite a bit in my adulthood and moving sucks. It's like the worst.
I was all about it in my 20s. I was like, this is rad. Like I can go get like the best snow in the country and go snowboard for this time. And then, when I want like to live the laid back surf life, I go back and it was the best of both worlds for a while. But then as I was getting older and it's like, you feel injuries more and you're kind of like tired of finding 6-month leases and you don't really want roommates anymore. It kind of got to be like, all right, this was awesome for a time, but like now you got to like think forward. And I was like, not like settling down per se, but I wanted to like chill out on the moving so much and kind of find a more long-term thing.
Yeah. What made you decide to come out to Portland and stay here?
My partner, Laura, got a job at the VA hospital. Actually, she's a nurse practitioner here. So it's been eye-opening, at least since COVID and all that,
I bet.
See how that's going down. But yeah, that was about 3 years ago now. So that was ultimately what we made the move for. So,
well, like liking the outdoors and wanting to be outside, it was a good place to be. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, it's funny because like I'm not a city person and she enjoys cities. And we were like, okay, well, let's think of some outdoor cities on the map to like where you're going to apply to jobs and whatnot. And they actually contacted her, but I was like, okay, good. Portland was on the list as like one of those compromises. And I had never been to the Pacific Northwest. I've been a lot of places in the country, but I always thought I would like it just knowing the kind of community and the outdoor culture and all that, I remember looking at a map and being like, okay, like the compromise is like, we got to go somewhere where like I can get out a little bit. So I remember seeing this big like swatch of green, and I had, had no idea at the time that I was referring to Forest Park. And so I was like, well, I want to live by this place. Like, come to find, like, it's not like that cheap to live right next to Forest Park. No. And you know what I mean? So anyway, we ended up finding a good spot, and we found a compromise, and it's great. Like, we got a dog. We moved out here and like just loving life. We hike a lot, and there's just so much beauty out here that's different from anywhere else I've lived that I'm really enjoying exploring.
So just out of curiosity, what were the other compromised cities that you were on the list? Were there other?
Well, we'd gone back and forth about Colorado, and we had both lived there previously. I've lived in a couple places in Colorado, and she had lived in Denver. But there's no ocean. I always feel a little landlocked after a while, and I don't want to like keep living like one of those people that's like grass is greener, because everywhere has its perks. Like Colorado is amazing. I think ultimately, like, we're trying to inch us closer to the coast, and this is like
it a little bit further.
City. Yeah, like a little bit. And all of our family is East Coast, so I imagine one day we might end up back that way. Sure. But for now, this is great. I mean, it's an hour and a half to the beach, so it's not as spoiled as I was like 5 minutes, but it's cool to be able to go snowboard, an hour this way, go surf an hour that way, go explore Washington State, or go down to Bend, or there's a ton to do around here, which I like as a jump off point.
And so like being out here then and being so close to nature and things like that, I was curious because you moved around so much and we're painting and stuff. Can you tell like the difference between paintings based on where you were, like what you were inspired by, what you were creating, or even how you were creating it?
Yeah, for sure. I think probably most notably when I moved to Vermont, this was, I guess, the equivalency of like our residency for Laura, which is like her first year of working in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so we lived in this like legit cabin that was like half off grid, no cell service. And it was a total like first time I'm like stacking like log piles and like figuring it out. And everybody in Vermont just kind of like live and let live, like self-sufficient, like a very cool vibe of like, just like, if you want to go on a hike, you don't have to worry about where to park. Like no one cares. You're just out there,
Yeah.
And with not a lot of people and a ton of time to explore all the nature there's less distraction, and I was way more acutely aware of all the wildlife around. So I think my work then really shifted to more wildlife focus then. And I just got lucky in the first kind of full year of doing art there that I was able to find some good outlets to sell, and a really cool kind of close art community there for as small and random as a place as we were.
Yeah.
And that gave me a little bit of confidence, like moving forward. And then obviously living in the mountains was more like mountain focused art and stuff like that. But what I'm doing at that time is a big reflection of my work.
Yeah. Cause where in Vermont were you? The only city I know in Vermont is Burlington, I think.
Yeah. That's probably like what most people know. That is like the city. That was about 3 hours north of us. We were in a small town called Quechee. And it's right next to Woodstock, Vermont, which is like this, when you picture like a Vermont fall postcard, like that's what it looked like there.
Wow.
It was really close to the border of New Hampshire, like by Dartmouth College kind of.
Okay.
And so it's beautiful. And I mean, I think if you had a community and like we're like are a big family and you were like ready to bunker down there, it's an awesome place to be. But at the time, there was just like not a lot socially going on. Like there wasn't, Yeah, so we got out of there and got the Portland gig, and here we are.
When you first started, and you started talking about this a little bit, when you first started like transitioning into like selling your work, did you like jump straight into being like did you do this full time, or did you like slowly creep in?
I kind of creeped in, I'd say. I knew at that point, like, okay, I really like this. It's exciting to think about like my art resonating with people and be able to make money doing it. Mm-hmm. So I kept putting more and more into that box. But I think at that point I moved back to North Carolina, which was like the closest thing I called home at that point. And I was teaching surf lessons on the side and kind of building up my portfolio and kind of just like feeling out how and where I could sell work and what that would look like. And I started doing some of my first art shows, which were just like small, like community events or like street fairs and stuff. But I actually had a lot of fun doing those. And there was a great learning process because I come to find out that whole section of the art world is like its own little thing. Like it's kind of like a carnival in a way. Like there's like roadie kind of group, like you see the same people at the shows and they're like schlepping around all their stuff in their van, or they sleep and they camp out and they like go. Some people like set up whole years just catered around art shows in summer.
Wow.
Where they go to like one-to-one. I don't do that many because it's a ton of work, but I like that opportunity to interact with people. So it's like putting a face to your Instagram names. People know you're real, and then you get like real-time feedback, and it's just fun and interesting, and I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, when you first were starting and like transitioning, why was like the medium like of like acrylic and canvas like so captivating to you? Like, what? Because there's tons of mediums, obviously, that you can create art on. Why was that one the one you enjoyed so much?
That's just kind of what I've always done. I mean, fundamentally speaking, I think my drawing skills are probably a little better than my painting. But in my head, when I want to create something, or the effect I think I want to portray is more of that like bright, bold, like that's what I want to put down. And that only seems to come to me through paint. Yeah. And as far as like acrylics versus oils go, I think I'm just too impatient for oils. Like I think they're really pretty colors, but they kind of take a while to dry. And so I like being able to like immediately layer and like once it's down, and like keep going. I like that.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about that like, so when you like do a layer of like oil painting, you'd basically have to wait and then do it again. Yeah,
you can. And I'm sure there's ways around that. And there's like obviously a lot more flexibility in blending and all that. And that's a whole art of its own. But yeah, for me, I like, put it down and like, within a little bit, it's kind of dry and you can keep painting. But with oils, they take like hours to dry.
Got to get a hair dryer out or something.
I know, like
speed up the process. When you first started, like when you're actually out in nature and like looking at things and getting inspired by different stuff, what like inspires you the most? Like, cause I find when I'm running, like I'm a marathon runner and I run like every single day. I feel like I think of really creative ideas because I'm just like doing a task that's like over and over again. Basically, my mind just sort of wanders, and I'm not like there's not a bunch of stimuli. There's not people talking to me. Totally. So when you are like out in nature and stuff like that, is that where you sort of find your best ideas or think about the things like that, or is that a similar situation for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I relate to that very hard. It's kind of like your flow state, it's like, it comes in different times, but it is usually doing something like outdoor, physically active. Like I'm not a marathon runner per se, but I do like to run, like go on trail runs and stuff. Yeah. On longer runs. Yeah. I like kind of find myself daydreaming. I mean, I daydream all the time anyway, but particularly at those times, or like if I'm surfing or like on a long hike, like I hike with my dog Moose like every day, and like he's super chill. And so like you're just so peacefully in the zone that you're kind of like, you can just let go. That is when I kind of get ideas and like, visualize color and stuff in certain ways, or in the shower, weirdly enough. Like I think something about being like eyes closed underwater, like that relaxation. Times like that definitely is when I kind of tap into like letting myself go to those places and like find those new ideas.
Yeah. Moose is a great dog name, by the way, as well. Is it a big dog?
He's a big boy. Yeah, I actually had to move his squeaker toys right now so he wouldn't interrupt it. But yeah, he's snapping somewhere. He's a big, long-haired German Shepherd. We got him from a rescue out here shortly after moving. So he is the best thing. Yeah. Even going back, like, do you remember the first piece of art that you sold to somebody? I do. It was. I took this very seriously. I think I was about 5 or 6, and as a kid, oh yeah. Wow. And it was cutthroat. I set up our whole sunroom in our house in Maryland, and I would price all my drawings, and I would okay. And then I would call my audience in, which at the time was just my mom and our dog Sandy. So I would be like, okay, the sale's on, and they'd come in, and I would literally nickel and dime them and have everything priced out, and they would buy my drawings, and then so. That's my earliest memory of actually selling art. Does your mom still have those pieces that you bought? I don't know if she'd ever say that. She sadly passed away when I was in college from ALS, unfortunately. Oh, sorry. But yeah, she I would imagine she saved them. There's piles of weird drawings and art stuff around. How much were you pricing those for? I would say a 5 to 10 cents, but the top dollar ones were 25 cents for sure. Wow. Yeah. I mean, as a 5-year-old, that's a good haul. So when you started actually selling as an adult, because you talked about
seeing the art pieces like hanging in the gallery and stuff and how expensive they were, was it hard to like figure out how much you were going to charge for like your pieces?
Totally. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
The business side of art is something that has been the biggest challenge, you know, 'cause it's not that a studio art degree doesn't help you hone your skills, the studio skills, like the actual painting, because it does in a way. But I think most people that go down that road obviously naturally have some ability that they want to, you know, curate and get and work on and get better. But the business side is what's hard, like challenging stuff like that, how to price your work, how to market yourself, how to find means of selling it. And especially for someone who's not like a natural born salesman, you know, you don't like, I always feel like at an art show, a little bit like a used car salesman where you're kind of like, you're like, hey, who wants some art? And it's like, you're putting this really personal stuff out there and you have to like relate to people, but it's kind of an odd crossroads of feeling because most artists I feel like are kind of, you know, personal, creative people that aren't necessarily like the best at being like salesmen.
Right. Because I have a similar problem with like video work and stuff. Like when I started doing more freelance work and like, I'm like, how much do I actually charge? I feel like, because I'm from like the Midwest too. And so I have this whole thing of like, I feel bad if I like charge more than I should, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Like
you're Midwest nice. That's what my partner calls it. She's from Minnesota and she's like, it's like Midwest nice. I'm like, what's that mean?
It's like I can't haggle with somebody. Like I don't want to do that. Like,
you should, and being bad at math, it'll be like, oh, I'll give you, you know, they're $30. I'll give you 2 for, you know, 70. I'm like, wait, that's not, you know, I really have to like check myself there. Yeah. But the best way I found to do it after kind of extensively researching this and talking to other artists and kind of just feeling that out is when you're starting out, it's a good idea to kind of price your work based on similar work, like artists that are producing the same or similar, you know, caliber art and quality or a likeness of your style and kind of go from there. And if you're consistently selling for say like 6 months to a year, that's when you can kind of up your prices because you want it to gain value. And I want the people that bought some of my works from 5 years ago to like have value invested in that. And it may not be as good as what I'm doing now, but I hope that as my work gets better, the value of their work grows too, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those things sort of too where you go to like, or you see art sell for like $1 million, like a piece of art sell for $1 million or something, and you're like, they must be just a really good salesperson. You know?
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, how do you get to that point? Like, come on. Like, I appreciate like what goes. I mean, being an artist, I get the time and the material and the inspiration. And there's some pieces I definitely like more than others that I'm like, I don't want to let that go for less than this because I think that's what it's worth. But there's some things you see out there and you're like, how the heck? Like,
how do they do that? How do they pull that off?
And it's an art in itself. It's like learning how to get to that point and market yourself that way and have people know that you're worth that if you are, you know. But it's hard because I think there's some art that does not blow me away, but people might be really good salesmen and that's like how they have a career. And there might be some really, really talented people who are just like, kind of like the hermit artist you picture that like doesn't want to like, you know, socialize with anyone and like doesn't sell a thing because they can't put themselves out there. So it's a delicate balance for sure. But I think art it makes a difference in your life and it makes you happy when you look at it and it should. And I want it to like inspire people and I don't want it to be this like thing that not everybody can afford. I know naturally, you know, we have to make a living, but I also want it to be something that everyone can get their hands on, and like to own an original piece of art is like really cool. And it's, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you have like the means and are able to do it, I just think those people are probably just so incredible. I would love to talk to someone that has sold something for like above $500,000.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, like, what are you doing? Like,
how did how did you get to that point? It's just like, it's just crazy. Cause I think about it, cause when you think about it in terms of like other pieces of art, right? If you think about like, even like a movie and stuff, movies are making millions of dollars. And so like, why can't you sell a piece of art for $1 million? It's just incredible to me.
If you find out, will you let me know?
Yeah, I'll let you know. I would love to meet someone that has done that because I just think it's incredible. And I would love to know how it all happened.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's mind boggling, but yeah, there's an art to it.
Yeah, we're getting completely off topic, but
I know
it's just always interesting to me because you see some people who like celebrities or just really rich tycoons, whatever, that pass away, unfortunately. And they always have like their assets of like how much, if they're donating stuff to charity or museums or whatever. And like, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I have a $10 million art collection. I'm like, what is that? What is that?
Yeah. What's that look like? Is this one piece? Is this like, what are we talking here?
Yeah. It's just so interesting to me.
That's why I think like looking back, like I wish I had kind of like minored in like business marketing and gotten or what, cause no one explains to you like, okay, I think I had one class that was that was titled Art as a Career. And I was like, isn't that what my whole major should be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And I should have paid more attention. I mean, I did, but they went through like how to do the lighting to photograph your own work and how to like talk to gallery and like how to price your work. And at the time I was like, yeah, this is like the boring stuff. But I didn't like really like grasp like this is what you're really going to need to know and less like, can you paint whatever? And so I think having that, if I could have gone back, maybe I would do that differently just to have a little bit more foundation of the art and the marketing and the business side of it.
Yeah, no, I think that would just be helpful for anyone that was going to sort of a creative field, Yeah, it's all interesting. Like the business part of art too is really interesting. So do you have a favorite piece though that you've made thus far? Can you even pick one out?
Yeah. I think in my beginning stages, there was a piece called Green Turtle, which is what it is, a green turtle. Yeah. It's like the background of my website. It's on my business cards. Yeah. It was one of the first paintings that I think really resonated with like a majority of people. And it just is like bright and happy and colorful. It's a cool perspective of like him swimming. And it was kind of inspired by like just a couple scuba dives or places that I've seen turtles in the water. And that one was good because I think that was kind of kickstarted my career a little bit. And like, I sold a lot of prints of that and it's just kind of like my namesake. But since then, more recently, I did a big landscape painting of the Three Sisters in Central Oregon. And I called it Sunsets and Sagebrush. And that one was near and dear to my heart. I sold it this past year, but made prints of it as well. And that one I just like a lot.
I think the talent in your style is just so amazing. So people definitely should go check out your stuff.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So with that being said, where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, good art? Questions. Katie Martin Art, all one word, is my Instagram handle. And it's also my website, katiemartinart.com. Like I said, I'm not wonderful with technology, but I'm getting better. So I think the most up-to-date stuff is on my Instagram and on my website. Like I said, like I want it to be something people can obtain. Like I want, that's the best feeling. Yes, I love to paint, but I'm so touched when someone like reaches out and they're like, I look at this every day and it makes me so happy, or this reminds me of my trip to wherever, or this means so much. Like that really feels good. So I like inspiring other people too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and taking time. It's been awesome chatting with you. Once again, your art is amazing. So I definitely go check it out and go purchase some, because you have prints too, right? Yep.
There's prints, there's cards, all sorts of stuff.
Anything your heart desires. Well, not
that's right.
Specific things. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's been great.